Yeah, boy indeed. So I didn't know much of Steve, and certainly of his really extraordinary life, and that comes through with every page. And shameless is a good word to describe his attitude to his life. You haven't hidden anything, have you, Steve? There's nothing left out of this, is there?
Actually, it's very heavily censored.
Well, that would be the publisher rather than you.
Well, I am the publisher also.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Well, it is. Well, it surprises me that it's been heavily censored, and I'd like to see the bits that are on the cutting room floor. The cover, as you can see, has Steve in his natural habitat outside a peep show striptease joint and a sex shop. And as Peter pointed out, and I was going to mention, it does start with a frolic, a financially rewarding frolic for two young Czechoslovakian girls, I think they were. One who had, where were they from? Yugoslavia, same thing really, just one of those countries. I don't know, I've never been anywhere you can't get on a tram. How would I know the difference between a Czech prostitute and a Yugoslav prostitute? But apparently Steve does, and it's quite clearly laid out here. But look, it's a wonderfully observant book, and look, I admire not only Steve but people like Steve who've carried that flame all the way through, and he's not starry-eyed about it all. It's a realist's view of what's happened on the left over his lifetime, and it does ask questions about where it's come from, where it's going, and where it's been. It's but that moment early on, and I can't remember now how old Steve was when he went to become a compositor, but 15 or 16 or so. There's very few opportunities now for 15 or 16-year-olds to rub shoulders with unionists and working people. Yesterday we had the big rally on the steps of Parliament House, the anti-terrorism law rally, and some of you, well, hands up to people who weren't there. That's, I suppose, the shame. Didn't even know it was on. That's how it's Australia, isn't it? Don't even know that it's on. But remarkably, there was a wonderful mix of age there, and there were quite a lot of young people at that event. But the experience of being stained by the workers, of spending time with people who not only introduced Steve to the films of the Communist bloc, but it introduced him to the literature of the left. And again, I think those things are very, very important, and they're the things Steve writes about very early in the book, and they're the things that I suspect now are more and more difficult to do. One of the observations Steve's had is about the nature of what comes out of Poland now that it's a free market capitalist society and the state no longer supports the arts, that the quality of their films has degraded substantially. And films that were probably, well, Steve rates them, and again that ability to remember prices and publishers and so on. There are lists of films that he saw as a very young man in here. He doesn't quite get down to who the makeup artist was in the films, but he has a remarkable memory for those things. And so there is through it, I guess, a great sense of loss. 8 years in Poland, was that right? I'm sorry to ask you questions. Yeah, 8 years in Poland at a time when I guess it was probably the most exciting time in Poland's history since the previous most exciting time in Poland's history, which was the most exciting time since the other previously most exciting time. It's an exciting country, and if they had trams that went to Poland, I'd go. But then there is the Poland post-Lech Walesa and a country that's been raped and pillaged by the West, and much of the life that Steve responded to and enjoyed has been destroyed. So I would heartily recommend it to you. Look, to be honest, I haven't finished reading it yet. And I will finish reading it because it's just a very readable book. And, you know, often we think that, you know, men that like Steve, the working men who had a minimal education, have no capacity to be able to write. I'm thinking here of great writers like Andrew Bolt, who can that wonderful facility he has that comes from a privileged background, but here is the antithesis of Andrew Bolt. It's very postmodernist, so those of you who are looking for a chronological history will be very disappointed. Some of you older people probably shouldn't read it at all. You'll find it deeply confusing in a postmodern way. And if you've got Alzheimer's, you'll never make your way through this book at all. There's just no sort of signposts along the way to help you at all. But as a tribute to a life that has been extraordinarily adventurous, and as I said at the beginning, that's not my nature. I'm not an adventurous person, and I envy Steve the experiences in this book. He really has led a remarkable life, and to end up down in St Kilda, sad really in many ways. There should be much more for him than being in St Kilda. But it's a great book. It is really, really well written. It's an intriguing book, and there's a great deal of history, and it's our history. It's not just Poland's history. There's a lot here set in Australia, but the stories around his time in Poland are really wonderful. And the thing that I hate him most for, let me find it. Sorry, I'll have to keep flipping. He's got an ASIO file, and I haven't. I hate him for that. I've tried to get an ASIO file. Really, I called Howard a prick on stage. You reckon that'll get you?
Page 21.
Oh, 21, thank you. Page 21. I haven't got my glasses on, that's why I'm struggling and having to ask you a question. But there it is, look. His own page from ASIO. And I've got to tell you, the writing on that page isn't as good as the writing on that page. Okay? And these are university-educated graduates who've gone into the spy system. So I'd like to recommend it to you. It's got some really funny photographs in it. It's even got cartoons, and Steve's been good enough to translate it for us. His Polish, and this is what I wanted to test him on. When Steve was being so adventurous and so exciting, I was beginning my life in comedy. And one of the very first routines I did at the Comedy Cafe in Brunswick Street, Fitzroy, was a thing that I called the Polish half hour. Because I shared a house with a woman born of Polish parents who taught me a sentence in Polish. I can't remember the start of it, but it goes, what is it? Oh no, it's gone. It's got, at the end of it is Pisarz la Łopak. Does that mean anything to you? Something like that, yeah. Young Taramas, no, that's not it. It was, the sentence in translation, you'll be able to help me here, was, I must now go to the kitchen and type for the boy. Because she used to do my essays for me. The cookie, the Pisarz how close was I? How close was I? I was that close! If I'd only spent 8 years in Poland and not 3 months in Parkville with a Polish woman, I could have said that just as well too. So we do share that language in common, Steve and I, and as long as the conversation goes along the lines of Steve saying, what do you need to do now? And I can respond, I now need to go to the kitchen and type for the boy, we'll have a very fine conversation, Steve and I. So, I commend it to you. How much is it, incidentally? I got mine for free. $22. And I don't know if you noticed, but under the table there's a Breville juicing machine. And at the end of the afternoon, we're going to draw the name, because we're taking your names from a hat, and you'll win a Breville juicing machine, but only if you buy a copy of the book. So, Steve, congratulations. It really is. It's a funny book. It's an interesting book. It's a delightful book. And I think for Australia today, I think this is a great story that needs to be told in the form that it is told. And I'd hope that it does get into the school system on the VCE curriculum, and that more young people take up the baton that Steve will hand on to the next generation and make of their lives what Steve's made of his. So, ladies and gentlemen, from London to St Kilda, I now officially and with a great deal of honour and pleasure announce that Strawberries with Everything, the autobiography, A Polish Odyssey, 1966 to 74, by Steve Brook, is now officially launched. Bravo!